Jo. Sollte wieder funktionieren. Bin rausgeflogen. Kommt ihr wieder alle rein? Der Chat geht irgendwie nicht. Jetzt geht's wieder. So. Ja, ich hoffe, die meisten kommen wieder zurück. Grüß dich, Onkel Alex. Stimme ist da. Gib mir mal bitte eine Rückmeldung. Rückmeldung. So, wir warten jetzt noch kurz, bis alle wieder, wo da waren, hier reinkommen. Hier wird nichts geblockt. Ich vermute, da ist irgendwie der Stream zusammengebrochen. Wir warten noch kurz 2 Minuten. So, Dankeschön. Tut mich echt sorry. Ich weiß nicht, was los war. Ich habe auf einmal gesehen, Stream war weg. Also, OBS hat gesagt, Fehler. Passiert. So. Wollen wir weitermachen? Der Rest wird ja nachkommen. Lassen wir uns nicht lange aufhalten. So, warte mal hier, den Browser freischalten. Rüber mit dem Browser. Musik ein bisschen leiser. Danke. So, pass auf, ich fange mal jetzt mit dem nächsten Video an. Und ich hoffe, es bleibt alles stabil. Nicht hoffen, es läuft stabil. Wir sind ja im Jetzt. So, auf geht's.
Our next speaker has a bachelor's degree in electroengineering and psychology from the University of Detroit. He did graduate work in psychophysiology, polygraphy, and biofeedback, as well as studied metallurgy, crystallography, and production steel in Detroit. He's a systems analyst with IBM in Detroit and Chicago, also a graphics development project through MIT's Space Lab. Lived with spiritual communities in Virginia, Massachusetts, and Finhorn. Currently, he's a vice president and technical director of SS Electric in Buffalo, founder of Crystal Hill Farm, and also the Network of Light, which is a beautiful spiritual newsletter for the community in Buffalo. Speaking on the topic of shape significance of genetic material as a wave path for frequency signature, my good friend Dan Winner.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom, so much. I really appreciated Bob Gulick's comments about the nature of what's evolving on planet Earth and our role in it. And I'd like to think of what I'd try to share with you as very much continuity from that. Basically, I became interested in using geometry to model what was happening in electron shells when I had this simple idea that if you understood all of physics and the universe as a simple shape of pressure, that when we began naming things, we made the conceptual mistake of thinking we were naming substance, when the only thing we really had to name in a universe made of only one substance was shape. So thus, if we understand the function of shape as a kind of wave guide, then we have the key to understanding how focus, the role of mind in a universe, is the only power required to create in a universe made of one substance, pressure. Simplifying that, we have the idea that if there's only one substance, physicists are telling us one other thing, and that is all complex shapes in the universe are made of one wave shape, the sine wave. So we don't need to have something complex in order to really understand the role of mind in a universe made of waves. We have one substance, it's compressible, and we have one wave shape, the sine wave. Any complex shape, a cell, a snowflake, can be described, fully understood, as a frequency signature, a spectral fingerprint, a Fourier transform, a description in the frequency domain of what exists in the scalar length domain. At any rate, this is a kind of backdrop then which can help us assume our responsibility as creators in a universe, since we do seem to have some of that power, the ability to focus momentum, to align fields. It's really very simple to understand the power of mind in a universe made of wave. If you think of what the finger does on a guitar string, it chooses the place which stands still. By choosing the place which stood still on the guitar string, it chose the frequency, the wave envelope, the shape. So focus, intention, mindfulness has this power to choose what is held fixed and thus create. Can we start the slides, please? I'd like to use that as the kind of backdrop to do some very quick images of how to understand this simple compressional world as a way to visualize the birth of shape in the universe. If you have a universe made only of smoke, what can you build with it? In fact, if you have one medium, the only thing that you can build of that same medium is a torus, a donut, a tourbillon, a smoke ring. That toroidal shape, which is represented in our image of the brain and images of the universe, is primal because different axes of rotation are superposed. You have axes of rotation this way and axes this way. So the reason it's stable is because two gyroscopes are living together and loving each other. And because of that, one gyroscope you can't push one way. You know how it seems to be stable? Because it's storing inertia. And the other gyroscope you can't push the other way. It's called a multiply connected topology, and it's a simplistic description of why the toroid is primally stable. So it's the birth of primal shape. In a contiguous field made of this compressible medium, if you superpose the origin of limit, the power of limits is the power to give birth to shape. It's the feminine, the womb. And the power of limits adds shape, the birth of the toroid, to the sphere. So if something limits the primal shape of the universe, like the distance light can travel until gravity pulls it back, then it has to assume the primal shape, toroidal. Eddington's formula for the volume of the universe and Arthur Young reflexive universe all have this saddle-shaped model of our visible universe superposed on a larger toroid, and the Big Bang theory is really our sense of perspective with relation to the center of the vortex. In theosophy, occult chemistry, Leadbeater and Besant visualized the primal subatomic particle as essentially toroidal, heart-shaped, the Anu. Later, this was justified in terms of more contemporary quantum physics, psi perception of quarks by Phillips from England, in which the 3 Anu were associated with the quarks. You see this helical array in the center of a toroid as the shape of the primal subatomic particle, formed from the formative processes necessary to balance the geometry of pressure to make the primal shape possible. The idea then of polarities, or differences of charge, and differences between electrical, magnetic, strong nuclear and weak nuclear, the fundamental forces, then become a difference of the harmonic or frequency of pressure in which the flow form occurs. And the net difference of flow centripetally, that is inward, yang, versus centrifugally, outward, yin, is what we call charge. Here we superpose the video, which I was going to show you. Doesn't show up very clearly on the projector, so we'll do it from the slides. But I have a video on a subject called Crystal Life, The Way of the Waves, which is this is an excerpt. And this is a simple Lee-Saljoule waveform of the notes C and G, a fifth, 1.5 times the base frequency. And you see how primal shapes give us the origin of the possibility of complex shapes. Here I've taken a feedback loop, a Moiré pattern, between the video camera and screen, rotated the angle of the camera with respect to the screen, adjusted the phase delay of the camera feeding back to the screen, and generated a variety of interesting feedback patterns. These on the video are a bit more dramatic, but maybe I'll have time for that on Monday, or rather on Sunday. Here, we now have this idea that the primal standing toroid gives us a model for the birth of the fundamental particle, a vortex theory of matter, if you will, as old as Descartes and as new as Bill Hamilton. The vortices superposed on the regular polyhedra, you see how each face of the polyhedra becomes a vortex, and every axis of symmetry around which the polyhedra could spin becomes one axis around which the vortex can spin. As it were, each axis of symmetry is the superposition of one toroid. And remember, every time you add one axis of rotation, you're adding dimension. What that means is you're adding a harmonic to the spectral envelope of the nodes which comprise the net array. This was the vision of how the columns of the atomic table were derived according to Leadbeater and Besant in occult chemistry. This is from one of the later, more physical analyses of occult chemistry, showing how the primal shapes of the regular polygons can be subsumed as understood by nesting of vortices, toroid. Similar. This was then their model of the atomic table from Crookes. In the top there, not very clear, does the focus adjust, cube, tetrahedron. The dumbbell group is icosahedral dodecahedron, then going back to tetrahedron cube. So that what we call valence in the outer electron, which describes our columnation of the atomic table, is in fact the number of axes of symmetry of the shape of the outer vortex net array. Again, described the same, except instead of graphically, just laid out in TypeScript. Then, seen three-dimensionally, that same atomic table becomes a lemniscate, a kind of figure 8, that each axis of the atomic table, what the atoms below have in common is this geometry of the outer electron array. And again, this is the same picture before lemniscates the atomic table. Most of the above from occult chemistry, Leadbeater and Besant, in the theosophic literature. This is from the Universal One, Walter Russell, showing the derivation of the atomic table from the simple heterodynes, or beat note interference pattern of one wave to all the lengths we call differences in the distances of the electron shells, which define what we call differences in substance, the atomic table. So each atom of the atomic table is derived from the unfolding of a simple heterodyne. Universal One is a wonderful book. So then this nesting of heterodynes becomes a model for the subsuming of one nest of harmonics inside the other. And we have the Kabbalistic type array. I'm going quickly. It's interesting that 3 speakers in a row chose the same slide. And again, I think this is from sensitive chaos, similar to kymetics. And again, you see how the toroidal array went superposed and folded back. And here you were talking about the sound making a pentagram, in this case hexagram, out of the liquid. Sorry, the slide's in sideways. This is the superposition of coherent sound upon a column of smoke. I think this was sensitive chaos. I'm going quickly because I'd like to, this is a interference refraction crystal platonic solid. There's some very interesting symmetries between the icosahedron on one side and dodecahedron on the other side, which I'll explain with a 3-dimensional model. Slides in backwards, but it's okay. It shows the precession of golden mean ratio in nested triangles. Edge length, radii, arc length, all proceeding in golden mean ratio, and areas within the triangles proceeding in golden mean squared ratio. Same thing except spiraling rectangles. Same thing, spiraling rectangles, the vesica. Same thing except spiraling cubes. In this case, I've taken 10 spirals of the golden mean generated at the MIT lab on their plotter and phase arrayed them at 36 degrees, and I generate the perfect nested pentagrams, which are what we see when we look at dodecahedron nested inside icosahedron infinitely, as Bob Gulick described. Here I'm using this, which later in my book, which I have extra copies here for folks, One Crystal's Dance, the Star Mother, I have laid out on the DNA helix seen from above, which that picture we've also seen twice today of the decagonal shape of the vertical view of DNA. And here, the way I interpret that is the blossoming gene, the cup of the grail, the name for the chalice which holds the light. Light is fooled. It doesn't know whether it's entering a simple net on a planar surface or an infinite tube. It all looks the same from up there. First, it finds its way into the nest, there to discover the perfect place to raise the heterodyne children of light without interference. A perfect nested pentagram. This is the trap which tempts light out of the fast lane into biology. Tempts light out of the fast lane into biology. This is the same map, 0.6181, 1.618, 2.618. So golden mean to the 0 power, to the 1st power, to the 2nd power, to the 3rd power, etc. 3-dimensionally, you're beginning to get the idea that we can conserve the information of shape in length, in area, and here in volume. The same nest of rectangles of the golden mean. The slide didn't turn out down here, but this is the same picture we saw of rectangles of golden mean, except extrapolated 3-dimensionally to show the cubic extrapolation of ratio. This was the illustration of the nest of 5 tetrahedron making the star dumbbell group of the atomic table. This is from Mathematics of the Cosmic Mind by Plummer, very similar to a slide Bob Gulick showed of the nesting of the regular polygons. We'll use the model in vivo, as it were. This I would like to talk a lot about today, and as time permits, it is the ratcheting of 5 cubes tilted on the Mac 3D graphics at 32 degrees from flat, and then ratcheted 5 times around 72 degrees and stopped on the way. And what it makes is a dodecahedron. So the 1 cube we'll see in the dodecahedron model on the table here can occur in that same dodecahedron 5 times. And as I say here, the angle at which the cube is tilted is a critical angle of phase shift. It tilts a planet, we'll discuss this, from an octet truss array, the octahedral, tetrahedral, net, cube lattice array, to the next sequence of arrays, which is icosahedral, dodecahedral. And the significance of that as a new grid for the planet is discussed, of course, in Argoius, but also in Anti-Gravity in the World Grid, in which Barbara Hero's work occurs, among others. Again, the same cluster of 5 cubes. I'm so happy with the graphics package. If anybody has a Mac Plus, get Mac 3D. I'll even give you some of the routines. You plug in your first dodec. I plugged in the X, Y, and Z coordinates. By the way, X, Y, and Z coordinates for all of the vertices in here are simple powers of the golden mean, okay, of everything you see here. But at any rate, I plug in the X, Y, Z coordinates of all the vertex points in one dodecahedron, and then extrapolate as a toolbox from the menu and nest my dodecahedron. And then I rotate. This is the same nest, and I have nested dodecahedron seen from above, the infinite nest of pentagrams on which we could phase lock the 10 spirals of golden mean. And then seen from another angle, you see the hex, which is exactly what the cube seen from above is, which is what you see when you see the top of quartz which is why the cube fits so nicely at the dodecahedron. And here you see the image of the nested vortices. So that's the same array, it's just a changed angle of vision. Angle is everything. This is the model here, which we'll discuss. Ditto, 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 ditto. Same model. That was dodecahedron. Again, 3 speakers in a row. It shows the same slide. Okay. DNA. So we understand the significance of holding information in a certain net ratio because the adjacent lengths are golden mean. Okay. Now, the significance of the golden mean as a Fibonacci progression is this: that each number, a plus b plus c, in the progression added together equals the following one. That's called arithmetic progression. In addition, each number, a times the golden mean equals b, b times the golden mean equals c. Any number in the progression times this constant, the golden mean, equals the next one. That's called geometric progression. The thing about physics that builds everything out of waves is it has to use heterodyning, which means you take 2 waves, you find them a place to hang their hats together, call it love. And then they make children, the heterodyne children of light. And they must do it without interference or their momentum is lost. And when momentum is lost, memory and mind is lost. So DNA fulfills this necessary requirement to conserve mind, memory, to conserve order along a pathway between frequencies, because every adjacency fills this requirement of the sum and difference and harmonic multiple heterodynes fit the nest. So the rotating dodecahedron forms decagon. By the way, this was originally, some of this was originally extrapolated from geometric extensions of consciousness by Anne Griswold King, who was a friend of Al Holm in Philadelphia. Wonderful lady, architect as well. Rotating dodecahedron forms decagon with 10 turns circumference in each turn, a divine proportion progression. Vertical increment of turn, phi. Horizontal increment of turn, phi squared. Radius of turn, phi cubed. Length, area, volume. What does the universe have to conserve along a pathway? Only shape. Shape is the only thing the universe has to convey. This is the elegant pathway for accomplishing it. I've laid from fields of form by, I have to think of the author, but at any rate, it's in the anthroposophic literature, the superposition of the axial array of the muscle tissue of the heart next to the anu, showing this primal way the universe has of using the liquid crystal of muscle tissue as a similar waveguide for a primal kind of stability. If you can hold your own, if you have a path with a heart, then you know who you are, you have identity, and that's our name for the immune system. I wanted to say something more about Centix, which has been brought up many times. This is the key picture from Centix by Manfred Klein. He used something analogous to spectral analysis, which was the computerization of average transients, which averages out the shape of the muscle pressure upon the table, which we experimented with the other day here. So if you wish to express emotion, joy, pride, awe, anger, pity, fear, you express it by the shape of how you touch. So if you were expressing love versus anger versus impatience, okay, what he showed was that cross-culturally this was identifiable, it was characteristic, it was archetypal. And that means, and he also showed that you couldn't do 2 at once. In a sense, emotionally it's impossible to rub your head and pat your belly, according to Manfred Klein's. Pardon? Oh, well, I use joy, pride, awe, anger, pity, fear as a description of the hierarchy of emotions from the Gurdjieff spiritual school, sacred gymnastics, designed to evoke the emotions in that order. That's not the order he used. He's using love, sex, anger, grief, hate, reverence, joy.
Yeah, it seemed like you had more.
Pardon?
You had a list of 5.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the focus is not good here. The book is wonderful, Centix. It's a little hard to find. The point I'm trying to make is that the function of emotion in the bloodstream of planet Earth is to massage the frequency envelope and joy of the gravitational field that is her collective mind. So what are people for in the emotional sense is to build the stuff of collective mind with coherent emotion. This was Gurdjieff's key point, and the function of sacred gymnastics and ecstasy. That was the Centix transducer. Notes about Kundalini, which we'll wait for another day. It's in the book. and then the natural tendency of man to assume the shape where ecstasy is transferred. Jacob's ladder. If the person on the step below you gets help from you, then you have your ticket to the next one. Pentagonal dodecahedral array is the path to the stars. This is from Keys of Enoch, J.J. Hurtak. I think that's it. That's good enough. Can we kill the slides? Bring up the lights. I want to play with this toy here. And I'm going to leave the light there. It's okay. This is real enough here. The thing that if you don't come away with anything else here, the outer gold figure, gold is the golden mean as it were, the length that is gold here is the same as the length that's yellow in the pure system. So note that the waves, the same wavelength that made the outer dodecahedron, made the next one in the blue icosahedron as a perfect nest. No change was required. Translation of vorticity. It was, I can't hear the tape. Oh, for the tape. Sorry, Tommy. Yes, translation of vorticity. Let me just mention to you that in Unified Science to Understand Miracles by some fellow from a spaceship, the formula for the translation of vorticity in a torus was used to derive the fine structure constant, 1/137 ... The idea is that if you know how rotation, it's translated from line to circle to line, you have the key from energy to matter. Illustrations, an example, in the pyramid, the radius dividing evenly into height, you have this wave that comprises circumference, circle, being exactly able to phase lock onto the line that comprises energy, straight down line from above, male versus female. Energy, line, circle, female, matter. And so this translation of vorticity that occurs in the pyramid brings energy to matter. And the pyramid's original function, phase lock the Earth after a tilted grid, is illustrative of that requirement. Example B, Victor Schauberger, choice of the shape of the horn of the antler to pour the water through to translate the vorticity from perfect circle to perfect line in a pathway which loses nothing. So the translation of vorticity, which occurs in the infinite nest of dodecahedron, is illustrative of the universe's desire to bring rotation to line into perfect balance, which is what the spiral of the golden mean is and comprises this nest. So the golden mean edge length three-dimensionally, any axis of symmetry you look at here is the perfect nest of pentagrams you saw two-dimensionally. And all of the laws of the golden mean apply. Every vertex position in the entire model, octahedron green in the center, two tetrahedron, cube red, dodecahedron green, icosahedron blue, and dodecahedron gold, every vertex in their x, y, and z coordinate is a simple power of the golden mean. So what that tells you is the distance from the axes of symmetry proceeds in that simple net ratio. It means that the universe doesn't have to do any work to get momentum along the pathway of elegance. So some ways in which we're using this information specifically to try to accomplish something useful in the health field is we have a research proposal that's been accepted at Millard Fillmore Hospital where we're using the biofeedback devices. We're actually talking to wonderful Valerie Hunt, Dr. Hunt, I'm so glad you're here, that we choose transducers, heart and brain, spectral analyze multiple channels, calculate the frequency of greatest coherence, and feed back the frequencies of heart and brain as a musical chord to teach coherence. And the volume of that chord varies with the coherence between. The TM literature is replete with examples of coherence increase correlated to city states and other beneficial effects of intentional relaxation. I have the literature with me. So in perspective, the teaching of coherence is the teaching of metabolism to hang together. So the name of coherence is what gives order to the water in the cell and makes it dance. And it's the same thing which makes the glands dance, as Ben Bentoff so well documented in his Stalking the Wild Pendulum, where he measured the acoustic phase entrainment between the glands. So what we're doing with this then is we teach coherence not just heart to brain, but you teach it to planet as well. The third variable, we're using Tom Vallone's wonderful ELF detector into the spectrum analyzer, and the third note in the musical chord heard by the person learning to relax is the planet's resonance itself, and the musical frequency of that is a way of learning to cohere and couple phase and train the planet, which is collective mind. So this is an example of a way we use the lessons of coherence The immune system is comprised of the envelope of the cells knowing who they are. If you know your name, then you have a role to play in the universe. What's happening on the other side of the cell to the 1,000 mitochondria there, it's obviously happening too quick for a strictly stoichiochemical transfer. It's obviously a resonance entrainment. The microtubules within the cell are waveguides. So the cell's ability to have this dance called metabolism is strictly related to the coherence, the orderliness of the liquids of which it's made. So if we teach coherence at the glandular level, we have the genetic material as the perfect stuff of which to make the connection to the cellular level. The long waves of the emotions are coupled to the short waves of the cell via explicitly the genetic material. All kinds of implications for cancer, no time for that. Let's talk about planet. So we have this metaphor of the function of the dodecahedral array in accomplishing a connectedness between the short and the long in the worlds of the cell's relationship to the body. What are we to learn about what's happening to the planet now? I'm speaking of the harmonic convergence. The story told in Anti-Gravity and the World Grid is of the Tibetans gathering in a circle to raise a huge rock up the cliff. And they had a way of doing it. It was very interesting. They would cut the rock as round as they could. They'd sit it in a stone-shaped chalice bowl, and then they would gather around and measure off with great vigor the exact arc lengths to set up their cacophonous musical instruments in a perfect arc around the stone. And then after the lengths were carefully measured off, and those measurements are in here from the English Royal Society Science, they would commence their din. And the music of those instruments would sometimes crack and break the stone, but those that didn't break, think of Earth, went up the cliff, lifted and rose, and there were many eyewitnesses, musically. What is the metaphor of the planet's relationships, the other planet's relationship to planet Earth in choreographing a lifting force? Obviously, we must assume some symmetrical array in order that mind can hang together enough to be lifted together. Actually, the story goes rather far back to the friends from Sirius planting seeds which were the tectonic stones of the main grid faces of the planet as it was born in Pangaea when the planets were together. And the migration of the tectonic grid stones around the planet were the glands of the planet attempting to find the ecstatic positions for a role in this dance of ecstasy. And the arrival at the presage to the dodecahedral array is the octet truss structure we find the grid in presently. Examples Joe Jackman and others in Anti-Gravity and the World Grid. The thing about what happens to the cube is that it is tilted at exactly 32 degrees before you can spin it and make a dodecahedron. The present axial tilt of planet Earth is 23 degrees. The planet has need for a vessel to convey mindfulness across galaxies. It's another name for the wheels of Ezekiel. It's decagonal, teardrop, Christos. And we as a species have, well, actually we as a planet have used that vessel before. The Mayans left. They left geometric clues to how to leave. Now, obviously, the goal of planet Earth is not necessarily to leave, but you will recall that the measurement of success of a schoolroom is that the students can leave. But the thing about planet Earth is that mindfulness of the sort that propagates across galaxies leaves only as a collective mind, because there's not enough coherence individually to accomplish this. So assuming the net array that produces this vesicle, this grail, this chalice, that catches enough light to fold the crystal of our collective mind, translated across galaxies, requires the birth of the dodecahedral array superposed on the planet Earth, the new grid. It is like when we call the ancients of days the L, as in Elohim, we were speaking of a phase shift. The 90-degree representation of the L is the translation of vorticity from the habit of attending to the node, where we seem to be living, to the habit of attending to the wave. That translation of attention, that translation of vorticity, is precisely accomplishable in terms of the net toroidal arrays and the heterodyne progressions we've talked about in the dodecahedron. So the planet Earth is hungering to be born as a living body, and the stuff of her blood is coherent emotion. So cities where apartments exist as bleeding emotional sores on the surface of the planet about to be rubbed off. And places where people are living close to the earth and ringing true exist as places where fountains of this new blood to make a mind for a planet are gushing forth, and the planet is saying, yeah, do it. What do you need? I'll help you. Okay? Because the massaging of the envelope of frequencies that occurs in the glands of the body is building that stuff of coherence that builds collective mind. It is the blood. Gravity is blood. So free energy devices aren't free at all. They tap the blood of the planet, which the planet is happy to give, as long as, just like an egg white wants to see its yolk born. At any rate, so we can feed the collective mind of the planet by taking on this question in physics called change of heart. Physics is really phi 6, physical phi cycle, phi the golden mean, you see. And a name for 5 is similarly derived. And angle, angel, archangel. We have many mystical roots in our language. So what would constitute a change of heart for us to begin to assume that we have some intuition now what are people for and would like to be part of this? There's this harmonic convergence. We have this little song and dance playing for Niagara Falls, and I have copies of what our group is doing, and it's here, and I invite you to take some. And our little publication network of light, our little logo is this nest of dodecahedrons. There are some of us who, in spite of the sort of grimness of planet Earth, it's like the crest of the wave. You know, the wave is approaching shore, and the shoreline starts encroaching, okay? The mineral resources are depleted, so the wave is pushed up, okay, just at that moment before the crash, when it would fall over on top of itself, and its momentum would be washed. There is that special moment where in the whitecap, the molecules that have best stood on the shoulders of their brothers can catch the light and become the clouds. And the harmonic convergence symbolizes the crest of the wave before the crash. Now, we don't bemoan when a wave crashes at the shore of the edge of the ocean. We note it as a change of pattern. The sum of the number of degrees in the geometric array is 144,000. It takes a certain critical mass to make a mind. And one of the most judiciously held laws of physics is called degrees of freedom in stoichiochemistry. And you can know how elegant a process could be by how many degrees of freedom exist there, strictly chemically speaking. The farmer who leaves a rose after adding nutrient does so with the knowledge that if he interferes with its unfolding, he wouldn't learn from its growth. So the choice to be part of a mind unfolding is the perfect test of love for whether we're ready to be a surfer on the wave, graduate from the schoolroom. Think, what would it take for the surfers on the wave to get together and hold their hands to change the shape of the wave? the test is upon us. Are there any questions? I'm going to have a few more pieces of material to sort of do with video, and maybe, I have the harmonic convergence audio tape here. On Sunday I have more time, but why don't we talk? Yes?
Yeah, you have the illustrations that you had of the Tower of DNA. Are they from the book that goes with this, or do you have other things published beside that?
They're from the book that goes with this. Sure. Why don't you catch that stuff later so I can kind of sort it out with you, okay? Because some of that I don't have extra copies of. Thank you very much. The book that I have shared here and is available for purchase out in the lobby for $9. The kit with book is $29. The book only is $9. And if you find pieces missing in the kit, send me a note. I'll get them right out to you. And the book with most of the key graphics images, especially of DNA, is in here in its entirety.
And are you going to publish more?
There's a group of us that's working on.
What's the title of the book?
The book is called One Crystal's Dance, The Star Mother, Geometric Keys to the Resonant Spirit of Biology. One crystal dancing, yes.
Something I've been pondering lately.
Mother of stars.
Assuming that the humanity represents the cells of the consciousness, the subconscious of the planet, and the fact that we have dramatically expanded the population of the planet, say since the nomads were roaming and really tuning into Earth energies, do you have a theory about what that is doing to the relationship with Gaia? Or what that buildup of emotional energy is doing to the geometry of the planet?
I think Gaia probably senses the requirement that heat and pressure make gold. And if you need heat and pressure, what you do is you mix. And the natural selection that comes in the mix is investment that Gaia is willing to make. We change diapers on a baby, and Gaia perceives our stink just that way, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you were talking about what you were talking about, you had, I think you didn't touch on the idea of point, but you did line, area, and volume. But isn't there something after volume?
Yes, so you have this idea that what is the fourth dimension of the cube?
Or just in dimension.
And what is the fourth dimension of the dodecahedron? You add the helix. Actually, in geometric extensions of consciousness, here, the archetype of the evolution of the archetype of the evolution of consciousness is derived from how, in one array, you have the tensor of cube lattice, and then icosahedra, then helix, and then spiral, and then it makes a cube that's much larger, and then it starts over, and then it starts over, and then it starts over. And she has done this from subatomic particle to atom to cell, to molecule to body to galaxy, okay? The idea that in each case superposing another axis of rotation, the next dimension, accomplishes the additional harmonic which we call mind. I would like to suggest that if there's one metaphor from the carryings on today that we could take to heart, it is that the discipline of the control of human emotion is perhaps the highest science we could aspire to. Our ability to maintain the chalice of our body with perfect nutrition and rest and balanced environment is the accomplishment of this vesicle of the Grail. The genetic strain mutates and takes on an extra ratchet turn, an extra sparkle, which you can see in the eyes. And so if we accomplish this idea that responsibility for the emotions we propagate is how we are or are not building this mind, then the next time we have the taste of joy that we might hold as you would a little child, instead of letting the touch and cloud of fear, then something will have been accomplished today. Thank you.
pleased to be here and meet all of you and learn so much about this cutting-edge technology. It's just awesome.
Geht? Mikro geht. Jetzt habe ich das nicht. Jetzt habe ich mal kurz weggeguckt. War das Video fertig? Weil ich war jetzt ganz kurz nicht da. Ich verlinke das Video nochmal unten. Da kann man sich das nochmal in Ruhe angucken. Ich denke, das war mega interessant. Und dazu passend habe ich jetzt noch das zweite, das etwas modernere Video, sag ich mal dazu. Auch mit Frequenzen. Ich finde das Thema Frequenzen sowieso sehr interessant. Da gibt es wirklich, wie bei Norbs World, wo wir uns das Video angeguckt haben, wurde auch sehr viel über Frequenzen in Verbindung mit Musik und Wörtern und so weiter erklärt. So. Machen wir mal das Video an. Untertitel sollte laufen. Bum, bum, bum.
My name is Billy Carson. I'm excited to be here. I'm sweating, but it's not because I'm nervous, because I very rarely get nervous, to be honest with you. I'm just hot. And I'm not taking off my jacket because I'm on film. This is a little bit about my bio up here. As you know, you've probably seen me on Gaia, Deep Space, Ancient Civilizations. I've been on Buzzsaw. I've been on Beyond Belief. I've been on George Norrie's Coast to Coast AM 3 times. I've been on with Jimmy Church. I've been on a lot of, notable places, and I believe that they're contacting me to come on and talk about this stuff is because I have some information that I'd like to share. They believe it's valid information for the general population, the general public. So without further ado, let's get started and get into this presentation. As you know, I'm the author of the Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. It's a new book that has just been released. It's only available on forbiddenknowledge.com with the number 4, forbiddenknowledge.com right now. This is just a photo that I took when I just got back from Peru a few weeks ago. I made a dedication to myself. I've been traveling for a very long time. I mean, I went to Chichen Itza back 20 years ago. But I made a dedication to myself moving forward. This was back in 2017, that moving forward I would get more hands-on in the field. Not just to be labeled as a researcher or a conspiracy theorist, or I like to call myself a conspiracy realist, but a person that actually goes out and gets his hands dirty and gets out there and find out, for my own self, what it feels like, what it smells like, what it tastes like. And so that's what I've been dedicated to. This is a picture that I just took just a few weeks ago. An amazing view at the top of Machu Picchu. I'm going to be doing a tour of Peru in 2020, actually, as well. I'll be announcing that probably online very soon. Just another photo, and I also proposed at that very spot. So if she would have said no, I was just going to roll right off the edge because, hey, I mean, I can end it right there and nobody would, know any different. I mean, we're literally at the very edge. It's like a 250-meter drop right there. So I figured I'd just roll off and be done with myself. But luckily for me, she did say yes. So that worked out. We're going to get married in that same spot as well. So we'll get married there probably when I do the tour of Peru. So everybody who comes to the tour of Peru will probably be at the wedding. Today we're going to talk about the fractal holographic universe. This is a photo that I took at the Field Museum in Chicago. And we're going to go into fractals. One of the things I like to do when I teach and talk about these types of things in lectures and workshops, I like to use a lot of visual material because people I found are very visual. And the majority of people are actually visual. And that's why Instagram has been such a big success. Instagram became a big success because it's very visual. It's mostly photos. I remember when it first came out, and myself, was not really too much of a visual learner for whatever reason. But when it first came out, I was doubting. I was like, pictures? I actually chuckled at the fact that just putting pictures online, I'm like, what are people going to put pictures of? How many pictures can you put up? then I said, one day I said, okay, let me just try this thing, because a lot of people started getting on Instagram like in 2011. So at the end of 2011, I said, let me make an Instagram account and post a couple of crazy photos and just see what happens. The next thing you know, it turned into something I couldn't even believe. From the beginning of 2012 until now, 801,000 now as of today on Instagram. Facebook started much later. It's around 600-some thousand. But between all 130 accounts that I have, it's up to almost 3 million people that follow all my different accounts. A lot of you are following other accounts, so you don't even know that I actually own those accounts. That's a part of the fractal. So what is a fractal exactly? A lot of people throw this term around a lot in the conscious community and in science as well, and physics. And a lot of people utilize it themselves, but not really having a true in-depth understanding of what a fractal actually is. So I wanted to pull up the definition. A curve or geometric figure, each part of which has the same statistical character as a whole. Fractals are usual in modeling structures as eroded coastlines and snowflakes, in which similar patterns recur progressively at smaller scales, and in describing partly random chaotic phenomena such as crystal growth, fluid turbulence, and galaxy formation. So you see why we're talking about fractals. Of course, the last term there, galaxy formation. I really do believe, and not just me, other physicists, scientists, really do believe that we're living in a fractal holographic universe, and I'm hoping that the information I present to you today will give you enough that you can go back and research for yourself and come up with your own understanding of it, and maybe you'll see it my way, maybe you won't. But I'm going to give you the information nonetheless. One of the important things that Nassim Haramein said was that the protons are entangled. Have anybody here heard of quantum entanglement before? Okay. Quantum entanglement is very important. It's a very powerful thing. It links us to the spiritual world. The reason why prayers work, if you know how to pray, and that's a very important thing I talk about at a lot of my seminars, you have to know how to pray, because there's two different ways to pray. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about it here as well. But you must quantum entangle with the source energy. And when you quantum entangle with the source energy, that's when you can get a result. If you're praying at the wrong frequency, in other words, if you're praying from a position of begging, from a position of being on your knees, which is not a problem being on your knees, but you're in the position of, I need help and I don't know where I'm going to get it, and I'm asking and begging for something, a result, versus using the power that's already in you of the creation and commanding your end result. Commanding I'm healed, commanding that situation is going to get taken care of, commanding that everything is going to work out in my favor. Not commanding as if I'm the creator of all planets and moons and solar systems and everything else, but commanding knowing that the source energy runs through you, in you, and out of you, and understanding that all of that is on the inside, and then you can push it to alter your reality tunnel on the outside. And in science and quantum physics, you can quantum entangle atoms by simply phase shifting the atomic frequency to the same frequency. So if I do parabolic down conversion with a laser and take two particles of matter and get them on the same frequency, I can take one of those particles to the other end of the universe. And then when I change the information or put data on the one that's local to me, the other one that's on the other end of the universe will change instantaneously to match. Okay, so that's incredible. That bypasses the speed of light. So what does that tell you? Distance is an illusion. Space is an illusion. Time is an illusion. Locality is an illusion. The fact that I'm standing up here now talking to you, I'm actually talking to myself. And vice versa, when you're talking to somebody, you're talking to yourself. We're all different aspects of the same exact consciousness. That's all we are. We're literally, consciousness divided itself into multi-Googles of entities to experience itself subjectively from various different perspectives on a data collection mission. Consciousness is here to collect information. That's what this whole experiment is all about. And what do I mean by that? Let's go into fractal mode and go down as above, so below. Let's look at your brain. Okay, your brain is encased in complete darkness. And what does it do? It doesn't know what's going on out there. It can't see, smell, touch, feel anything. It says to its friends, please, you guys go out there and collect some data. Bring me back some information so I can figure out what's going on out there. So sight, smell, hearing, feeling, touch, and everything, they go out, they go, okay, we're going to go out and collect this information for you, but they themselves don't know what the data is. They can't decipher it for themselves. They have no idea what they've collected. They've just collected literal zeros and ones of bits of information. They bring it back to the brain that's encased in complete darkness, and then what happens? The brain puts it all together, figures it all out, and then projects a hologram of what's going on the outside. And you navigate through that electromagnetic field to bring you even here to this seminar today. That's how it works. And when you quantum entangle, when he's talking about, and I see him here, he's talking about quantum entanglement, it lets you know that everything is connected. We're all connected. If you, energetically, all of our particles, all the atoms that make up our bodies are all still connected. We still literally are all one. Separation is an illusion. The only thing that gives you the illusion of matter and separation is when you slow down the frequency of an electromagnetic wave and it then add consciousness and a conscious observer, then you can break it down into a pattern that can be recognized as physical matter. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a creation that we're living in that luckily for us is not 100% static. It's dynamic. And when you know how to I call it navigating through the matrix. That's what I call it. When you know how to play in the matrix, your life will become a lot easier. A lot more things, the law of attraction will work a lot easier for you. Your prayers and meditations will blossom and bloom more. Your desires will come forth a lot better, a lot easier. But it all starts with understanding, first of all, what are we living in? What are we actually a part of here? And I think that once you get a good understanding of that, a lot more stuff will open up for you. And some people will call this New Age information, and I think it's ancient information, which is why I wrote the book, The Compendium of the Emerald Tablets. I go deep into how to manifest light, how to manifest matter from light particles, which Thoth talks about 36,000 years ago, how to use vocal frequencies from your own throat to alter your reality tunnel. That's in the Emerald Tablets as well. I break all this down. Some people thought that he was calling on names of people. No, he's calling on frequencies. He's emitting or emoting frequencies from his vocal cords that actually have a direct effect, when you say those words the proper way, on space-time, the ether of space-time itself. So I go into all of this, and some people go, well, what are the Emerald Tablets? So I just want to give you a quick breakdown, because this is the fundamental basis of a lot of my research, to be honest with you. The history of the Emerald Tablets is strong and well documented. The original text was written in Thoth's Atlantean language. The version I'm referencing right now is basically from Dr. Tartaria, who you can find his actual interpretation on crystallinks.com. A new translation has been published from the Arabic version of the Emerald Tablets, and it's called The Book of Causes, written by the famous Thomas Aquinas. A lot of people who maybe have followed the Catholic Church know Thomas Aquinas. A translation by Sir Isaac Newton. You might have heard of this guy before. Sir Isaac Newton, his work is currently housed at the King's College Library at Cambridge University. So his translation, interpretation of the Emerald Tablets are in England. You can actually go there and look at them. Philip of Tripoli also translated the Emerald Tablets in 1240 AD. A famous version of the Book of Secret of Creation and the Art of Nature was written in 683 AD by him, which was also inspired by the Emerald Tablets. A famous author named Roger Bacon was accepted into Oxford University at the age of 13, also translated and wrote a version of the Emerald Tablets. He was an English philosopher, Franciscan friar, who placed considerable emphasis on the study of nature through empirical methods. In the early modern era, he was regarded as a wizard, and particularly famed for the story of his mechanical, neurocratic, brazen head that he created. He's sometimes credited, mainly in the 19th century, as one of the earliest European advocates of the modern scientific method, which inspired Aristotle and by later scholars such as Arab scientist Al-Hazen. And also now in 2018, a brilliant man, you might have heard of him, Billy Carson, was also inspired to write a compendium of the Emerald Tablets. Okay, so you might have heard of that guy. But this information goes back 36,000 plus years. That's how old this information is. And when you tap into the Emerald Tablets and start reading it, you start realizing right away, if you read the book, you'll see it syncs up with a lot of the religious books that are really more New Age, modern, like the Bible, the Quran. All these modern religious books have taken information directly from the Emerald Tablets, and I mean almost word for word. It's when I start lining up those scriptures to something written 36,000 years, you have to say to yourself, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, this stuff is really old, and you start to realize that a lot of this information was literally hand-picked directly out of these tablets. And when you look in the Old Testament of the Bible and some of these other texts, you discover that that information came from the Sumerian tablets, which are publicly available, and you don't need Zechariah's Hitchens to decipher the Sumerian tablets. The Sumerian tablets have been deciphered hundreds of years before Zacharias Hitchin was even born, before he was even an embryo or whatever you want to call it, a spermatozoa. That thing has been floating around. Oh, he's the only person that can decipher it. No. What Zacharias Sitchin did was he took information from the tablets that were already deciphered hundreds of years before he was born, and he took information from the Bible, from the Quran, and from other religious texts, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, and what he did was he painted a picture. He tried to piece it all together and give us an idea of what may have happened. I think that his work's been venerated because a lot of independent scholars have now gone into the tablets, including myself, and have come up with the same concept. Now, the story may be slightly different here or there, some of the particulars, but the overall idea that these advanced beings came here in ancient times, and they didn't create a human being from scratch, like just, oh, poof, we're going to make a human out of dirt and do some chemical, alchemical stuff. But what I personally believe is that they came here and an existing hominid was already on this planet evolving, not the typical evolution of, the science, mainstream science, but we were here already and probably most likely a lot smarter and more intelligent than we are now. I'm dead serious. I'm not talking technologically smarter, maybe not in that time frame that they arrived, because there has been 4 advanced humanoid civilizations on this planet before the Anunnaki even got here. They came at a time when we were down. We had fallen again through the cycle of the yugas. Civilizations rise and civilizations fall. That's just the cycle of life. There's nothing you can do. It's a very cyclical thing. And when they arrived, there was an existing hominid here who was attached to this planet more spiritually, more in tune with the Schumann resonance and frequency of the planet. We all still have millions of magnetite crystals in our brains right now, and we don't even use them. Well, not all of us. Some of us here are using them. But a lot of people don't use them to navigate the planet, to detect situations that are occurring. For example, if there's a tsunami coming inland, wild animals get away from the coastline hours, sometimes days before it occurs. How come they know and we don't know? We stay there and we're swimming in the ocean and we get swallowed right up. But all the wild animals head up to the mountains. They're in tune with the earth. They're in tune with the planet. And I believe that based on the skull size of some of our ancestors that were here, they weren't called Homo sapiens at that time. They were various different humanoids. To me, in my personal opinion, after looking into the research and looking into some of the archaeological sites, they were way more advanced than us. Their pineal gland was larger. They were spiritually in tune. They most likely had psychic capabilities, can communicate without moving their mouths and everything else, maybe even telekinesis, a lot of other various gifts that we are now all just starting to rediscover, how to download information. And real quick, I want to talk about that because a lot of people use the word I get downloads. Never be afraid to use that because let me tell you something, the human DNA is very powerful. It's also a fractal pattern. But one of the most interesting things I found out about the human DNA is that 1 gram of DNA, that's enough to put on the tip of your finger, can store 700 terabytes of data. 700 terabytes on 1 gram. A human body can literally store all the information from the beginning of time until this day. 1 human body. You're literally walking around in a gigantic storage unit of data that's already inside of you. And when you look at what happened when these beings came here, they disconnected that. So it wasn't that they created a dumbed down version. What they did was they started disconnecting our information and made us into Homo sapiens. Our brains got smaller, our pineal gland shrank, and we have all this junk DNA that used to be connected. Now, one thing they discovered about the DNA is that you can actually download digital bits of information directly onto DNA. Zeros and ones, like I can connect it into a microchip, put it into a computer, and I can upload and download files, videos, play this whole presentation on DNA. Think about that. This is being done in universities all over the country. So I think they downloaded the whole Library of Congress onto the DNA and uploaded it back to the server. Now they discovered as well that, well, we here already knew, that everybody emits a frequency. That frequency is emanating out and in, upload, download from DNA. So when you say you're getting a download, you're really getting a download. Your body, if it's in tune to the right frequency, will download information directly into the DNA, and now they found out that memories are stored also in DNA. So you can download information, digital bits of information into your DNA, and they can then be sent to the brain for processing, and you can get spiritual contact, you can see into other dimensions, you can get deeper into meditations, you can get in better, higher levels of intuition. All these things are very capable and possible and are not freakish mystical, things that shouldn't be happening to human beings. These things should be happening all the time and on a daily basis. This should be a normal part of our lives. Right now, the people that are in these positions of being able to tap into these frequencies and gather information are considered superheroes, in my personal opinion. But eventually, as we continue to move back towards that golden age, a lot more people will be able to tap into these abilities as well. Thoth built the Great Pyramid. This is in the Emerald Tablets. His exact words, "I builded the Great Pyramid, patterned after the pyramid of Earth's force, burning eternally so that it too might remain through the ages. In it I builded my knowledge of magic science." Magic science translates into advanced technology. "So that I may be here when I return from Amenti. While I sleep in the halls of Amenti, my soul roaming free will incarnate, dwell amongst men in one form or another, Hermes the thrice born." And one thing that, if you've seen some of my other talks, I talk about these halls of Amenti, which were now discovered underneath the Great Pyramid at Giza, where Thoth would go down for 100 years at a time, and he had been down there 100 times by the time he wrote these tablets. So that's 100,000 years he has spent in regeneration chambers. Yeah, which have now been discovered underneath, and they're covered in depth in the book and sort of photos and everything. Underneath the Great Pyramid, hundreds of these rooms that are down there, where most likely they had these regeneration chambers that he would utilize, and he would transfer his consciousness.
Ich will mal kurz Pause machen. Hört man mich, ja, ne? Mit diesen Smaragdtafeln von Thoth, es gibt deutsches Hörbuch, auch auf YouTube. Ich kann mal gucken, ich kann es verlinken. Geht sehr lange. Mega interessant. Sollte man sich wirklich mal anhören. Deswegen habe ich auch dieses Video ausgewählt. Wird vieles gesagt, oder der Thoth hat viel geschrieben. Und wir haben ja auch in dem Video mit den Dolmen, ich glaube der vergessene Schlüssel war das, mit den Dolmen darüber gesprochen. Die waren auch nicht, also wie die Pyramiden, sondern die Dolmen waren auch nichts anderes wie, wo man sich reingelegt hat, und man hat dann sozusagen Verbindung mit dem Universum aufgenommen. Und das Gehirn ist ja nichts anderes wie ein Empfänger, kein Speicher. Und das finde ich hier interessant. Es wird gespeichert in der DNA, sagt er. Und ich habe ja auch ein bisschen nachrecherchiert, und es wird ja auch gesagt, dass das Gehirn nichts anderes ist wie ein Empfänger und Verarbeiter. Er speichert ja gar nichts. Und das finde ich gut, dass er das hier auch nochmal so aufschlüsselt. So wollte ich mal so am Rande erwähnen. Finde ich mega interessant, was er hier sagt.
From one avatar body to another, which we're now doing ourselves. You look at DARPA. DARPA has the Avatar Project. Successfully already has now transferred a human soldier consciousness that's in a concrete room, probably in a bunker somewhere, into a field robot halfway around the world or in some test facility. This is documented, real science. It's already been admitted. This isn't like a conspiracy. This is real stuff. You can look it up. So we're now, just like the movie, the consciousness of the soldier is inside of this robotic body. If you look at the 2045 project with Russia, they are now at the point where they've already transferred the consciousness of a monkey into a computer. And the monkey thinks it's alive. It's eating bananas, it's climbing trees, it's running around. The monkey is dead. Well, physically in this realm it's dead, but it's living inside of a computer. That's how easily the mind is fooled. And when you start looking at these virtual reality games and how high tech they're getting, you can understand that why some people are getting heart attacks from being inside of virtual reality. People have had strokes being inside of virtual reality, because that's how good it is. It fools the brain into thinking that you're really there. And if it's a scary scenario where it's some kind of a roller coaster or whatever, and you get scared, you can literally have a heart attack or a stroke. But the reason why I brought this up is because pyramids are a very big part of the fractal pattern that we live in. Like I said, I've been all over the world. This is a video of me at Teotihuacan in Mexico. This is the Pyramid of the Sun behind me. This pyramid is built of multiple pyramidal structures on the internal part of it. So inside this pyramid it's built based on a fractal pattern design. And like I said, most of the pyramids around the world are all built on this fractal pattern type of a design, where there's pyramids inside of pyramids inside of pyramids until you get to the outer structure. There's also the Pyramid of the Moon there. That as well is a multi-pyramid design. So when you look at the internal structure, it's pyramids on top of pyramids, and it's built again in a fractal pattern. This is me at Giza at the Great Pyramid. Again, this pyramid, I've been around it, inside of it, on top of it. This is one of the most amazing pyramids in the world, and it's called the Great Pyramid for a reason. It has so many astrological and numerological features in it, and it's just mind-blowing and outstanding. You can calculate everything with the Great Pyramid. You can calculate the speed of the Earth around the sun. You can calculate the distance to the moon. You can calculate the distance to the sun. You can calculate the tropical year, the sidereal year. This is all based off the pyramid blocks and the geometric shape and the feet that it has on the base, as well as the height at the top. The height of the Great Pyramid will give you the average land height of all the land mass in the entire world. How do you get that information? That means you have to be in something above the land that scans all of the land mass, and it has to take that information into consideration, and it has to come up with an average number. When it comes up with that average number of land mass, then you say, okay, we're going to build a Great Pyramid to that average land mass height, so that somebody in the future can discover how technologically advanced this is, or key in on some of these mysteries that we have hidden here. This should be like a beacon to say, hey, there's more knowledge than this in here. So when I looked into it, the Great Pyramid is 455 feet high, and that's the average land mass of all the land on Earth. It's also built directly in the center of the land mass of Earth, not in the center of the Earth. It's built in the center of the land mass. So again, you would have to be able to scan the entire planet and find out where would the central location for all land mass on this planet be located, and boom, right there. When you look at the Peri-Reis map, which is an ancient map that dates back and has been reproduced many, many times over and over lambskin and everything else, this ancient map depicts Antarctica without the ice, exactly as it would look if the ice was removed. The other thing that's amazing about this is that it's written in a certain type of an angle on the parchment, and that angle could only be viewed from space looking directly down on Cairo, that perspective of the map. So again, we have another hint that these people may have been, our cousins may have been space travelers. This is me inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. Inside the king's chamber, these gigantic magnetic granite plates are 100 tons, and behind them are fractal pyramids behind these granite plates. And I'm standing right there with what they call the sarcophagus, which is not a sarcophagus at all. It's actually the same exact dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant most likely used to fit directly in that box. That box was added to the structure much later because the pyramid was a power generator amongst other things. This is just one of the features that it was a power generator, but it also did it transmitted information, it transmitted sound frequencies, it transmitted, in my personal opinion, even images. It probably opened up portals. It had a lot of functions and features to it. If you look at the location of the geometric coordinate for the Grand Gallery, not the Great Pyramid, but the Grand Gallery itself, it's located at 29.9792458. Look at the speed of light in a vacuum, 299,792,458. So you see that's meters per second, by the way. So you go, wait a minute, meters weren't invented or discovered until the 1960s or whatever. No. When you go into the Sumerian tablets, you start to learn a lot of information about our ancient history. They had a metric system, a Proto-Sumerian metric system, which is even on Wikipedia, believe it or not, which I don't really go for Wikipedia, but the fact that they even documented it, but it gave me some links to some valid sources, which I was able to check out, and to some actual tablets that had the metric system written on them 7,000 years ago. So forget what you learned in school about we just started getting the metric system. That's all brand new. It's all new age stuff. The metric system is ancient, okay? Very ancient. This is me at Chichen Itza. This pyramid, again, at Chichen Itza is a fractal pyramid. On the internal parts of this pyramid are multiple pyramids. Tulum as well, multiple pyramids here, okay, inside of this structure. When I tell you guys I've been all over the world, I'm just telling you I've been everywhere investigating this stuff, getting my hands on it. So no matter where you go around the world, you're going to find pyramids all over the world. And the structures are all built on these nodes, these magnetic nodes, or these power nodes of the Earth. And when you look at those power nodes of the Earth, you discover something. They're even fractal. So the planet's got fractal power nodes, and these ancients discovered, and every single one of these points, even if it's in the ocean, you will find a structure, a megalithic structure or a pyramid on every single one of these points on our planet. And that's absolutely amazing. And that's science fact, not fiction. This is something that's being looked into right now by a lot of people, the people that scour the oceans for wrecks and everything else, are discovering everything. They just discovered pyramids off the coast of Florida inside the Bermuda Triangle, which I talk about on the new show that I'm on the Travel Channel. Will be coming out in a few months. There's pyramids everywhere. If you draw a line from the Bermuda Triangle pyramid straight through the earth to the other side, you end up at the Dragon's Triangle, where you have the Yagone Pyramid, which is actually a tourist attraction. You can dive to it. There's a gigantic, and guess what? They have the same exact mysterious disappearances as the pyramids they just found off the coast of Florida. Why? Because those pyramids are still generating a form of exotic energy. They just discovered that. One of the objects was taken from the pyramid complex out of Florida and taken to a laboratory, and it's emitting some upward ionic field. And when you apply a magnetic field to that, anything you put above those ions levitates. And this is in real science, documented, real footage, actually documentary footage, which you'll get to see some of that pretty soon. Creation according to Hermes. In the beginning, Noahs, which is also translates to God, created a second Noahs who became a craftsman and creates the world. Noahs too creates 7 powers and 7 spheres around what will become the earth. The 7 spheres have control over...
Nochmal kurz anhalten. Wenn ihr in den Medien mal beobachtet, werden im Moment sehr viele Artikel veröffentlicht, wo Pyramiden gefunden werden. Sei es in Deutschland, also europäisch, also umgrenzende Länder, Bulgarien, Rumänien, Bosnien ist ja bekannt, wie auch Russland und so weiter, ihr kennt die. Die sind ja alle auf diesen Leylines, wenn man es so will. Das hat er eben gerade gesagt, die haben alle, befinden sich auf diese Leylines. Und diese Leylines, wenn man da jetzt noch weiter geht und die Erde mal als flach sich anschaut, also diese runde Karte von der Plane Earth und dieses Torusfeld, was wir vorhin gesehen haben, sozusagen am Nordpol nach oben steigt, nach außen geht und wieder wie so ein Apfel außen rum und dann nach unten wieder die Energie nach unten reingeht und so weiter und so weiter. Ja, dieses Torusfeld, ihr kennt das. Im Internet gibt es genug Bilder davon. Wenn man das von oben sich anschaut, also direkt, also die Karte von oben und dann dieses Torusfeld, diese Blume des Lebens, sagt man ja auch. Und die projiziert man dann sozusagen auf die flache Erde. Dann kommt ihr auf dieses, was ihr vorhin hier gesehen habt, auf diese Karte mit diesen Leylines. Das ist jetzt sozusagen der Querschnitt. Das müsst ihr euch vorstellen, wenn ihr das mit der flachen Erde, mit dieser runden Konstrukt euch anguckt und dann die Blume des Lebens rauflädt. Und wenn ihr dort zum Beispiel das, ich bin noch am Suchen, wie bei Google Maps, dann die Linien entlang geht und ihr seht dann immer diese Knotenpunkte, diese High-Punkte, so wie hier. Hier ist ja die Pyramide also die große Pyramide von Giza, wie er sagt, im Zentrum der Landmasse. Ne? Von dort aus könnt ihr dann immer die Linie verfolgen, da müsste dort auch wieder was sein. Ich glaube, hier ist das Auge der Sahara, soweit ich mich erinnere. Ja, hier haben wir das Bermuda-Dreieck und so weiter. Im Bermuda-Dreieck ist ja auch eine Pyramide im Wasser. Was ich jetzt meine, gibt's auch, das ist nichts, die Pyramide von Giza ist ja nicht die größte. Es gibt ja noch eine viel größere Pyramide, die soll, glaube ich, sogar schwarz sein, komplett schwarz. Ich vermute mal jetzt aus meinen Erinnerungen her, müsste das irgendwo bei China, glaube ich, gewesen sein. Dann, na gut, über die Antarktis wollen wir jetzt nicht reden, weil bei der flachen Erde ist die ja komplett im Ring. Aber jetzt beim Nordpol könnte ich mir jetzt vorstellen, theoretisch müsste ja auch eine Pyramide sein. Nur so, hier nochmal was, weil Anfragen waren wegen diesen Leylines, wo wir noch ein Video machen werden. Habt ihr jetzt schon auch ein paar uralte Karten bekommen, mit Hilfe von Telegram-Mitgliedern, wo die Leylines noch zu sehen sind, also auf diesen Navigationskarten, Weltkarten, uralte. Und nicht so wie heute geografische Karten, die geografischen Linien, die sind ja kompletter Blödsinn eigentlich, ja. Und danach haben sich die Seefahrer orientiert. Und dann, wenn man noch weiter fragt, ja, warum, wie sind damals die Karten entstanden worden? Weil ja angeblich keine Fluggeräte und so weiter und so weiter. Haben wir ja im Kanal schon behandelt. Also das wollte ich jetzt hier nochmal ein bisschen hinzufügen und finde auch toll die Aussage, dass in der Pyramide von Gizeh eigentlich sehr, sehr viele Informationen verbaut sind. womit man dann auch schon viel arbeiten kann, aber auch vieles in der Öffentlichkeit, ja, ich sage mal, verfälscht worden ist, also Falschaussagen, wie der Sarkophag war ein Grab und so weiter. Ne? Er hat ja auch gesagt, der Sarkophag, wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe jetzt, drückt aufgrund der Abmaße die Landmasse von der Arktis. Ne? Also wenn ich jetzt falsch bin, könnt ihr im Chat gerne korrigieren, aber so etwa hat er das jetzt auch erklärt. Machen wir weiter.
Footage, actually documentary footage, which you'll get to see some of that pretty soon. Creation according to Hermes. In the beginning, Noahs, which is also translates to God, created a second Noahs who became a craftsman and creates the world. Noahs too creates 7 powers and 7 spheres around what will become the earth. The 7 spheres have control over what will be the earth. They control what we know as destiny. The 7 spheres are the moon, the sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Here is the beginning of astrology. Noahs too sets the spheres in motion. So this is literally an archetype of talking about creating a fractal pattern that can create all life in the entire universe. And this goes into the 7 principles, which I'm not going to go into all 7 principles. I'm going to mostly focus on the principle of correspondence, which is number 2. The principle of correspondence is as above, so below. We've all heard about this before. That gets into fractal patterning. Again, this is from 36,000-year-old text in the Emerald Tablets. Thoth is talking about as above, so below 36,000 years ago. And it goes into very in-depth detail about it. And here is what we know as the seed of life. We see it all the time. We've got jewelry now. We put it on our websites and our screensavers and everything else. But these circles here basically is where everything starts. And there's a group of cells at the base of your spine that are still in this format right now to this very day, because once those first 7 cells form in this pattern, they stay at the base of the spine in all mammalian life until you die. This is a cross-cut section of DNA that has a flower of life and the golden ratio built directly into it. So no matter how small you go in the scale, you see a fractal again. The fractals are consistent throughout nature. And here we go again with mitosis. You can see just looking here as a cell develops, how you can correlate it to the flower of life pattern. And the flower of life pattern itself is an energy pattern that emanates in us, around us, and through us, and is everywhere, and it's omnipresent, which we're going to see in a minute. And this pattern is literally what emanates and jingles frequencies that allow matters to jingle into existence in the 3rd dimension. But it also can be broken into a biological method to where you can create life from it as well. It's everything. Everything is fractals. I'm sure some of you have seen this before. A brain cell versus the universe. The birth of a cell versus the death of a star. A human iris versus the universe. So a nebula. So you can see all these different patterns throughout nature consistently. Once again, in my personal opinion, proving that we're living in a fractal holographic universe. This pattern is burnt into one of the pillars at the Assyrian Temple, which I've been to, and I'm going back next year, which is I'm taking a group of people with me. I'm going to actually be the tour guide at this time in Egypt. But this particular pattern is hermetically burned into this column. It's like atomically fixed on this column. Nassim Haramein talks about it in a documentary. I forget the name of the documentary now. You probably have seen it before, but he talks about this as well. One of the things he has seen and found to be very interesting, that it dates back tens of thousands of years. See, the Assyrian Temple is partially buried at Abydos, and above it is another temple. When you go to Egypt, you start to discover that there's sometimes 4 temples built on top of each other. The other temples are deep beneath the sand. You can't even see them anymore. There's some still that have not been excavated and probably never will be. This Assyrian temple is only partially excavated and partially fills with water at different times of the year. At one point, it obviously wasn't completely submerged, but they left a little calling card for us with this flower of life symbol depicting torus energy fields, 0-point energy, and also creation of life. So you can see the same thing in the solar system. You can see that with the correlation to the inside of an atom versus our solar system. And just like how electrons can change orbits, our planets can change orbits. The planets in our solar system have actually switched places before. So when an electron collides with an atom collides with another atom, and the electron picks up a charge, it can jump orbits around its atom. It can actually change positions. And the same thing happens in our solar system when a very big spatial body passes through our solar system, which now science has proven mathematically that Saturn and Uranus had switched places. And the reason why Uranus is on its side is because of a gravity pull from another planet that came through here in deep, deep antiquity, which is talked about in the Enuma Elish and the Seven Tablets of Creation, again, which is a work of Sumerian tablets that was decoded and translated long before Zechariah's teaching was even born. And also it's talked about in at the epic of the Atrahasis, or the Atrahasis epic, which is also translated in the 17 and 1800s, long before Zechariah's teaching was born. So the reason why I always add that in is because you have the trolls that try to, come in there. And I love Zechariah's teaching's work too, because I think he's one of the greatest researchers of all time. But these, it's talked about that this spatial body, this mass, came through our solar system, collided with some other planets, and rearranged the planets in our solar system. Cell division, and you can see the effect as above, so below one more time, and we're almost done here. But this is very important to understand how we go from the largest to the smallest, and how you can also see yourself as part of the whole. This is you, basically, as you can see, the spermatozoa. You start out with the male energy, entering in the egg in the upper right. So eventually somebody will win this battle. It's already been scientifically proven now that sperm even communicate with each other. That's another thing a lot of people know, that sperm communicate with each other. So they're alive. They're actual individual life forms. Once they break through here in the top right, that's when the spark of life happens. That's when your consciousness enters into your avatar body. At that moment is when you're synced, your quantum entanglement happens from your higher dimension self and sinks in with this avatar body and puts you into what I call a temporal, not a temporary, but a temporal prison, where your consciousness is encased here in the third dimension for a temporary amount of time. So that you can see in the lower left, the brainstem and the brain itself is just another further extension of the spermatozoa. It's not that it is the spermatozoa, it's that it's a fractal pattern, as you can see. And then everything else you have around that stem and that brain is just there to keep the avatar alive. That's all. This is a meme I made a while ago. Hello, I am the universe, and it is a pleasure for you to meet yourself. Because we literally are all the universe, and the universe is us. And some of you guys know about Dr. Masaru Emoto and his scientific experiments. The guy is absolutely, well, he was amazing, rest his soul now. I got to go to a few lectures of his number one assistant that he had, that he taught everything to, and going over frequencies. Like that song that I was playing a minute ago, that was written in encoded at 432 hertz. And he was really big on frequencies, as well as how thoughts affect water. And also you can see the fractal patterning based off of positive frequencies and positive thoughts on water, which I thought was really amazing. What is a hologram? So now we're going to go into talking about holograms, and we're going to put it all together. A three-dimensional image formed by the interference of light beams from a laser or other coherent light source. A photograph of an interference pattern that, when suitably illuminated, produces a three-dimensional image. And we're living in the third dimension. So when I look into that, the deeper I look into it, the more I start to feel that we're living in a projected light matrix. And what that means is every single atom that exists in this third dimension, I mean every single atom, is made of light. No matter how you break it down, I don't care if it's this table, this counter, this computer, this microphone, when you get into inside the atom and you split it open, you're going to get energy, you're going to get light. Everything actually exists as an electromagnetic wave until a conscious observer collapses it into what we consider to be digital matter. So to me, at some point on the outer edges of the actual universe itself, all information is data, it's stored there permanently, but also there's a projection emanating inward, which we're going to go into a little bit, that creates what we consider to be our reality. Now, we're living on the inside of this projected reality, which means we can't fully detect it. We're submerged and immersed inside of it. We're most likely not living in base reality. A lot of people have talked about this. Even Elon Musk has now come out and talked about it. A lot of other physicists have come out and talked about this, that base reality is most likely multi-levels. And we're probably living in a universe that was created by somebody else or some other group of people. We could be living in an ancestor universe. We could be living in some child's school experiment, a school project. But we ourselves are now creating our own universes consistently. This is something that's going on everywhere. CERN, at universities all around the world, at different scientific facilities and research facilities. We are deeply involved in creating universes and black holes. This is something that we're doing right now. We meaning the people in those positions that are working on these particular experiments and projects. We now have, as you know, The Sims that people can play, and this video game is going to be conscious. They're saying at first it was going to be within 20 years, now it's going to be much sooner than that. Probably within 8 years, the Sims are going to be conscious. Now you may say, that seems unrealistic, but when you're talking about multidimensional beings, elementals, and these types of things, we're talking about people that are living in other dimensions that have the capability. These Sims must have found a way to phase shift their atomic frequency, because if you phase shift your atomic frequency, you can literally pass from one dimension into the next. All you have to do, all that's required to pass into another dimension, is you must match the frequency of that dimension, period. There's no other way, there's no other reason. That's included as well for wormhole travel. You see some of the jet pillar ankhs that the ancient pharaohs would hold in their hand. Each one of those jet pillar ankhs were tied to a specific frequency of that pharaoh's body, which allowed him to walk through some of the portal technology. You had to match. If it doesn't match, you cannot. I get that information directly off of crystal stones that were left at the Bosnian pyramid that talk about that. But in this particular animation is obviously a little facetious, but they must have broken out of their matrix. And the only thing that stops my hand from going through this podium is not that I can't pass it through this podium, because atoms are 99.9% empty space. You never really touch anything. It's the repulsion of the electromagnetic energy in my hand, the electrons in my hand are repelling the ones in this podium. But if I was able to phase shift my atomic frequency of the atoms in my hand to match this podium, I'd pass my hand right through it and bring it right back with no problem. So when you hear of people walking through walls and all these types of things, it's very realistic. I put everything back to real science, real physics, things that could be done in a real scientific way with scientific thought. And in my personal opinion, it doesn't take away from the spirituality. What it does to me, it enhances it, because now I'm understanding the underworkings of how this stuff is operating, not just thinking it's some kind of weird magic. The feminine energies have been oppressed in the third dimension, going back into ancient times, all the way up until now. It's still not being fully realized, but you must have the balance. And when you don't have the balance, look at the state of the world today. Look at the state of the world today. So what I'm saying is you have to have that balance, and that's part of the energy that creates up the universe. My final statement here, we are living in the matrix. We are living in a holographic matrix. Thought, which is I am, materializes reality on this planet as a vibrating light or a hologram. It is brought in through electromagnetic frequency, which is vibration and sound. Thus, what we see or think of as solidity is actually a hologram created through thought, light, and sound. Everything in this material world is here because our higher light frequency self has called them into being. Just like a video game, when the next frame of graphic appears as the characters need them to. We are a collective consciousness of everything created. Our particles instantaneously communicate with one another regardless of distance, whether we are 10 feet or 10 billion miles apart. Somehow, each particle always seems to know what the other particle is doing, and all information is possessed by the whole, and although we think we are separate from this whole, we are not. Separation is an illusion. This whole, or all that is, cannot be separated. We are the Sims, as we just saw. We are a part of this fractal of light that makes up this entire third dimension and this holographic universe. Your consciousness wave function collapses electromagnetic energy into quantified digital bits of information that we call matter. And that's it, guys. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Ja. Wir haben ja Video, Würfel haben wir rausgebracht. Und da wurden ja auch ein paar Aspekte genannt, was für eine Dimension wir leben. Ihr habt ja bestimmt schon von diesem neuen Projekt Meta gehört. Und wenn ihr die Symbolik da, diese Unendlichkeitszeichen gesehen habt, das hat ja auch viele Bedeutungen. Jetzt meine Überlegung. Matrix 4 habe ich gesehen. Und da sind auch viele Ansätze drin. Also sehr viele Schlüsselbotschaften sind da versteckt. Ähm, Vedun ist auch dabei, eine Folge zu bringen über die Matrix. Wenn ich das jetzt so sehe, wir sind in eine sogenannte dreidimensionale Welt hineingebracht worden. Also ja, wir haben ja Avatare und wir leben in diesem Avatar. Ja, so wie er gesagt hat, in einer Computersimulation. Wir werden noch weiter nach unten frequenziert, aufgrund der Strahlung, die von außen auf uns eindreschen. Ja, sei es der WLAN-Router oder das Handy und was auch immer, ne, wissen wir alle. Manchen haben auch so, es gibt Tage, da piepst das Ohr zum Beispiel, ja. Andere nennen es Tinnitus, dauerhaft Tinnitus. Ähm, Denke ich, hat auch was damit zu tun, mit dieser Frequenzbombardierung, die hier stattfindet. So, jetzt gehen wir nochmal zurück auf dieses Projekt Meta, was sie jetzt veröffentlichen wollen. Und er hat auch darüber gesprochen, dass sie damals in der Lage waren, sozusagen ihre Seele von einem Körper zum anderen transportieren oder sie konnten sich vom Körper sozusagen heraus, ich sage mal beamen, ja, und dann irgendwo wieder rein beamen. Ja, gibt ja viele Bücher, wo man sich da mal einlesen kann. Viele werden das auch wissen, wofür die Pyramiden unter anderem genutzt wurden. Ja, waren ja eigentlich so auch so die verschiedenen Kammern, habe ich zum Beispiel gelesen in einem Buch, waren so verschiedene Meistergrade. Ja, in jeder Kammer wurde eine bestimmte Stufe erreicht und wenn man das geschafft hat, dann war man natürlich gut dabei, wie man das heute bei den Freimaurern kennt. Ja, der höchste Grad ist der 33 und die müssen ja auch verschiedene Stufen, Prüfungen durchgehen. Jetzt ist die Frage, wenn ich das Projekt Meta sehe, Bewusstseinstransfer ist kein Problem technologisch gesehen. Er hat es jetzt hier in dem Beispiel mit diesem Sperma gezeigt, habe ich jetzt auch so noch nicht wahrgenommen, aber war sehr interessant, dass eigentlich ein Bewusstsein, sozusagen das Sperma ist das Bewusstsein, das dann eindringt in das Ei und dann wachsen wir in unserem Gefängnis auf, Körper nennt sich das Ding ja, und dann irgendwann ist der Körper fertig, ja, Umwelteinflüsse und so weiter brauchen wir ja gar nicht drüber diskutieren, und dann geht's weiter. Im Video Würfel habe ich ja auch, wurde auch gesagt von ihm, wo ich übersetzt habe, dass, warte mal, dass ich den Faden jetzt nicht verliere. Was wollte ich jetzt sagen? Dass wir ja, so wie oben auch unten, vielleicht echte Avatare haben, aber unsere Seele sozusagen hierher transferiert wurde oder weggenommen wurde und dann hier in dieser 3D-Ebene rein transferiert wurde. So, jetzt leben wir in einer 3D-Welt und wenn ich das jetzt kombiniere mit Meta und Matrix 4 zum Beispiel oder die Matrix-Trilogie, sollte sich jeder mal wirklich genau angucken. Ich finde, ja, das ist die beste Dokumentation, die jemals gefilmt worden ist. Wirst du von einer 3D, vielleicht, ich sage mal übertrieben, in eine 2D-Matrix hineintransferiert. Ja? Also, es ist nichts Gutes, was da geplant ist. Ne? Ihr könnt gerne mal Kommentare im Chat schreiben, wie ihr darüber denkt. Aber der, wo wach ist und versteht, wie das Ganze hier funktioniert und er denkt, das ist vielleicht real. Ich würde nicht das als real bezeichnen, ja, wo wir hier leben. Und jetzt kommt noch so ein riesen Computerprojekt mit VR-Brille, so äußerlich gesehen, aber innerlich läuft es eigentlich Gefahr, dass auch schon aufgrund der Handynutzung oder elektronische Nutzung und so weiter ja Daten von uns gespeichert werden und ja irgendwo übertragen werden können. So 1:1 würde ich mal behaupten. Ne? Also ich weiß nicht, was das jetzt zukünftig noch bringen wird. Ich persönlich halte mich da fern von dieser Technologie, sag ich mal. Aber sollte man mal auch drüber nachdenken. Und es werden sehr viele Vorträge und so wie ich es euch jetzt hier gezeigt habe, veröffentlicht, die sich mit diesem Thema, ich sage mal Matrix, ja hier Computersimulationsleben und so weiter, kommen ja immer mehr raus. Und das ist ganz interessant, das mal zu hinterfragen. Und das ist auch so, was mich so fasziniert irgendwo, das mit euch zu teilen, mit euch zusammen zu gucken. Ja. Das zudem. Ich denke, wir haben jetzt 2 interessante Videos, also 3 insgesamt. Das ist der erste Teil. Ich habe das auch so gespeichert jetzt bei uns im Kanal. Part 1. Das hier ist Part 2 wegen dem Abbruch. Mal gucken, nächstes Mal könnten wir ja nochmal so ein Video auch in dem Bereich, was vielleicht etwas tiefer oder was das Verständnis vielleicht nochmal zu dieser Thematik nochmal ein bisschen besser aufschlüsselt. Ich habe da noch ein geniales Video, das das eigentlich auch ähnlich beschreibt. Narayana, wenn ich das richtig ausspreche, schreibt, mit dem Vibrieren geht es, also trainieren und lernen, steuern, energetische Anstöße und dein Kanal ist offen. Ja. Du hattest auch was mit dem Käfer geschrieben, mit diesem Skarabäus. Das Skarabäus, habe ich gelesen, hat ja mehrere Bedeutungen. Wenn man sich den von oben anschaut, gleicht es dem Bild des Schädels, dem menschlichen Schädel. Und der Kreuzpunkt von diesem Verschluss, also wo die Knochen zusammenwachsen, das Zentrum ist ja sozusagen der Kanal, wenn man noch Baby ist der offen. Deswegen sind ja die Babys oder Kinder bis zum Alter von, lass mich lügen, 3 oder 6 Jahre, korrigiert mich, und haben dann noch ein Verständnis, das sehr offen ist gegenüber ab dem, wo du sozusagen dann anfängst mit der Schule und so weiter. Und die Schädeldecke dann auch zugewachsen ist. Das ist ja dann nochmal so ein Punkt. Ja, Black Mirror habe ich auch geguckt. Sehr interessante Aspekte werden dort gezeigt. Und der schwarze Spiegel hat jeder in seinem Zimmer hängen. Einen schwarzen Spiegel. Nennt sich Fernseher, Flatscreen. Sollte man sich mal mit dem Thema Spiegel befassen. Was sind Spiegel? Macht es Sinn, Spiegel im Schlafzimmer zum Beispiel zu haben? Oder ein Fernseher im Schlafzimmer? Haben wir auch mal im Kanal behandelt. Ich glaube, wir haben sogar ein Video über Spiegel gemacht. So ein Kurzvideo. Müsst ihr mal gucken. Schreibt mal ganze Sätze. Das wäre echt super. Ich kann dann beim nächsten Livestream mache ich mal, ich habe ja noch eine Facebook-Seite von uns. Da sammle ich auch sehr viele Bilder. Da sind auch Bilder drinne von diesen Sachen, was ich jetzt angesprochen habe, Skarabäus und so weiter, die das erklären. Telegram haben wir auch einige Bilder zu diesem Thema, was die Symboliken. Er hat ja das mit diesem Anker gesprochen, das hat ja mehrere Bedeutungen. Wir hatten das Thema Menstruationsblut durchgenommen. Sehr interessant für die weiblichen Zuschauer. Da steckt auch sehr viel Verborgenes drinne. Wollte ich noch ein Video drüber machen. Ansonsten würde ich sagen, machen wir für heute fertig. Und dann schauen wir mal, machen wir wieder einen Livestream demnächst. War spontan wieder heute. Freue mich, dass so viele dabei sind. Ich hoffe, das Thema hat euch soweit gefallen und ihr habt da ein paar Erkenntnisse gewonnen. Ja, Karin? Bist du bei uns in Telegram zufällig? Frage? Oh, habe ich Verzögerung drin, oder? Mit dem Schreiben. Ich muss das mal rausmachen. Also die Spiegel sind ja auch Portale. Na, anders gefragt. Gut, die Verlinkung haben wir bei uns im Kanal zum Telegram. Warte mal, ich mache mal ein bisschen Musik. Mir ist das hier zu langweilig im Hintergrund. Wenn es euch nicht stört. So. Mich hört man ja trotzdem. Telegram-Kanal habt ihr, wie gesagt, von uns in der Kanalbeschreibung drinne. Ich kann ja mal gucken, ob ich das nächste Mal, oder nicht das nächste Mal können wir nicht so viel machen, dass wir da nochmal verschiedene, also in den zukünftigen Livestream noch die paar Aspekte reinbringen. Spiegel haben wir. Santos Bonacci wollten wir nochmal was machen. Norbs World haben wir schon durch. Matrix können wir nochmal gucken zum Thema. Wenn ihr irgendwelche Themen habt, wo sagt, Steffen, sucht da mal ein tolles Video und so weiter, könnt ihr mir gerne schreiben. Kann ich das hier noch ändern? Nee, kann ich nicht ändern, ne? Nee, also beim nächsten Mal werde ich diese Schreib... Wie nennt sich das? Diese Schreib... Zeitlimit werde ich auf 0 ändern. Dann dürfte das funktionieren. Gut. Ansonsten... Welche Videos? Wir haben ganz viele Videos bei uns im Kanal. Wie gesagt, jetzt am Freitag, denke ich, müsste wieder eins rauskommen. Aber geht da mal in die Playlist Specials. Da sind eigentlich die für uns die wichtigsten Videos. Dann haben wir noch Kurzfilme. Und bei den Kurzfilmen ist auch das mit den Spiegeln. Livestream, so im Hinterkopf sind so, wo ich sage, mit euch zusammen Videos gucken. Da gibt's, ich habe so viele Videos, könnte ich euch wirklich zuballern. Mega interessant, die sich anzuschauen. Wir können es so machen, ich lasse jetzt hier doch den Stream 5 Minuten laufen. Im Chat können wir noch kurz ein bisschen schreiben. Dann mache ich ihn erstmal offline. War schön, dass ihr da wart. Und ja, beim nächsten Mal könnten wir ja mal gucken, die Kombination zwischen Sprechen und Schreiben. Wir testen dann gleich mal, ob diese Schreibgrenze da funktioniert. Und wir haben, glaube ich, noch einen Livestream vor auf Telegram. Gestern war einer mal ausnahmsweise direkt auf Telegram. Werde ich noch hochladen, eventuell. Da haben wir das Thema, Evolutionslüge und Geologielüge haben wir durchgenommen. Und haben uns auch mal historische Bücher angeguckt. Was wir auch gerne so zwischendurch machen auf Recherchebasis. So Bücher aus dem 15. bis 18. Jahrhundert. Da kriegt man schon noch so diverse Informationen. Man darf natürlich nicht alles auf die wahre Schale nehmen, weil auch hier sind Möglichkeiten da, dass man da ein bisschen fehlgeleitet wird. Da ist auch das Buch mit Nos, was ich für euch veröffentlicht habe. Das hat sehr lange gedauert mit der Übersetzungskorrektur da. Da ist allerdings auch das Buch selbst verlinkt. Gut, also wie gesagt, ihr könnt noch ein bisschen schreiben. War schön mit euch, danke. Und ich, warte mal, ich guck mal schnell, wie das Video heißt. Dann sag ich dir das. Gib mir eine Minute. Dann sag ich dir, wie das Video heißt. Kolonie. Ja, wir haben immer so spezielle Titel. Da muss ich jetzt gucken. Mythologie, Skulptur. Der Schlaf ist auch ganz interessant. Fleischlüge. Steampunk. Na, wo haben wir es dann? Freie Energie. Ist das schon so lange her? Mandela-Effekt. Die Kuppel, Sternenfestung. Menschen. Hier irgendwo war es doch. Ah, war das... Nee, das war zu kurz, oder? Und noch weiter. Ich hab's gleich. So, warte mal, ich guck mal, ob es das ist. Bin mir nicht sicher. Ist es das hier? Wenn du willst, kann ich dir das auch gleich nochmal zeigen.
Nichts macht so stolz wie eine neue Einrichtung zum Segmüller Tiefpreis. Richtet euch gemütlich ein, mit sensationell vielen Einrichtungsideen. Immer zum Segmüller Tiefpreis. Segmüller.
Leben erwartest und dich ändern willst, wenn du was schaffen willst, um eine bestimmte Höhe zu erreichen. Nichts Mächtigeres, deine Adresse, das. Wenn alles, was sich unverändert schaffen willst, was ich
Nee, das ist
zu
es nicht,
erspähen,
oder?
dein wahres Ich zu erblicken, der in einem Kreis läufst und versuchst, keinen Sinn macht. Nach wie viel? Wir wissen es nicht, oder? Die meisten von uns benutzen nicht die Möglichkeiten, die uns mit dem Leben mitgegeben
Nee, das ist
werden.
es nicht.
Lauf dein Leben zu verstehen.
Das hieß anders da. Oh. Ah, doch, ich hab's. Achtung, warte mal. Ich kopiere mal. Kopieren. So, warte, ich zeig dir das Video, Karin. Wenn du möchtest, zeige ich dir das noch schnell. So. Nochmal groß. So, warte. Okay. Achtung, es geht los.
Hallo. Heute zählen wir alle uns bekannten Mythen über Spiegel auf. Mit Hilfe von Spiegeln haben die Urmagier sich Verbündete aus anderen Welten herbeigeschworen. Heiler heilten mit Hilfe von Spiegeln und die normalen Menschen versuchten damals wie heute in die Vergangenheit zu schauen oder die Zukunft vorauszusehen. Eine mögliche und mehr verbreitete Meinung über die Spiegel werde ich jetzt aufzählen. Wenn man einen Spiegel zerbricht, so hat man 7 Jahre Unglück. Egal wie glaubwürdig dieses Mythos erscheint, so gibt es einige Wege, um den Fluch wieder rückgängig zu machen. Schmeiß eine Prise Salz über deine Schulter. Und das zweite, wenn der Spiegel gerade zerbrochen ist, sollte man sich 3-mal entgegen den Uhrzeigersinn drehen, um den Fluch zu bannen. Normalerweise bringen viele aufgehängte Spiegel im Haus Glück, so der westliche Mythenglaube. Erklärt es damit, dass die Eigenschaft der vielen Spiegel es ermöglicht, effektiver das Böse von sich zu lenken und das Gute anzuziehen. Und nebenbei symbolisiert es auch noch, dass man wohlhabend ist. Hänge einen Spiegel neben den Tisch im Gästezimmer oder Küche und das Glück und Wohlergehen beschert dein Haus. Ein weiterer verbreiteter Aberglaube, der mit dem Verdecken der Spiegel bei einem Todesfall in der Familie zu tun hat. Esoteriker erklären diesen Brauch mit den ungewöhnlichen Eigenschaften des Spiegels. Jeder, der im Spiegel gespiegelt wurde, verblieb auch in diesem Haus. Die Seele des Toten könnte sich im Spiegellabyrinth verirren und für ewig da drin bleiben, ohne den Weg ins Jenseits zu finden, weil nicht abgedeckte Spiegel unendlich Möglichkeiten bieten. Die Verbannung einer Seele in den Spiegel, auch wenn unfreiwillig, zählt als schwere Sünde und könnte ihnen viel Unglück bringen. Äußerste Vorsicht wird deshalb beim Umgang mit den ganz alten Spiegeln empfohlen. Sie ähneln irgendwie alten Schlössern, genauso voller Geister und lange verstorbenen Menschen, die sich jemals in diesen Spiegeln spiegelten. Vor allem in den Spiegel verbannte Seelen von Toten. Sie könnten nicht nur dir Pech und Verderbnis bringen, sondern auch deiner Verwandtschaft. Diese Spiegel müssen zerstört werden, um sich selbst zu schützen und die darin gefangene Seele zu befreien. Man kann solche Spiegel sehr leicht erkennen. Laut den Magister weißer Magie erkennt man so einen Spiegel wie folgt. Wenn vor diesem Spiegel eine brennende Wachskerze erlischt, egal wie oft man diese wieder anzündet, so heißt es, dass in diesem Spiegel eine Seele gefangen ist. Außerdem ist so ein Spiegel gefühlt kälter als andere Dinge im Raum. Wenn ein Spiegel zerbrochen ist, so sollte man den Mythen nach nicht hineinschauen. Richtig sollte man vorgehen, wenn man sich den Splittern von der Seite nähert, ohne darin gespiegelt zu werden, und sie in eine Tüte einsammeln. Beim Wegwerfen sollte ebenfalls der Augenkontakt nicht mit den Splittern zustande kommen. Die Tüte sollte auf jeden Fall mit entsorgt werden. Es gibt noch eine weitere Variante. Du schmeißt eine Zeitung, einen Lappen oder ähnliches auf die Scherben und sammelst sie ohne anzuschauen auf. Es ist verboten, einen Spiegel im Schlafzimmer an der Decke anzubringen oder gegenüber des Bettes, wenn du beim Schlafen gespiegelt wirst. Es wird zur Trennung von Ehepaaren führen oder sonstige Unglücke verursachen. Die Mystiker sind sich sicher, dass Spiegel die Fähigkeiten besitzen, negative Energie zu speichern. Albträume, chronischer Schlafmangel, Zerschlagenheit, Müdigkeit sind üble Merkmale solcher Anomalien. Es wird empfohlen, diese Spiegel an einen anderen Ort zu hängen oder sie beim Schlaf abzudecken, falls ein anderer Platz nicht vorhanden ist. Es gibt auch weitere alte Mythen, die aus dem Osten kamen. Es wird empfohlen, den Spiegel nicht zu tief aufzuhängen. Der Spiegel darf nicht tiefer hängen als der Höchste, der in dem Haus lebt. Seine Energie wird schwinden und ihn werden Kopfschmerzen plagen. Aus demselben Grund werden die Spiegel nicht zu hoch aufgehangen. Slawische Bräuche untersagen den Frauen während ihrer Periode in den Spiegel zu schauen, so auch bei Schwangerschaft und kurze Zeit nach der Entbindung, da die Frau in dieser Zeit als nicht rein gilt. Auch gibt es einen Brauch, der es untersagt, ein Kind bis zu 1 Jahr in den Spiegel zu schauen. Früher befürchtete man, das Kind werde sich erschrecken oder einer dunklen Macht, die auf der anderen Seite lauert, begegnen. Schlafstörungen oder Albträume werden es plagen. Gefährlich ist nicht nur die Berührung einer dunklen Macht, sondern auch die Bildung einer multiplen Persönlichkeit, was bedeutet, die Spaltung zwischen der lebenden Welt und der Welt des Bösen, eine Verwandlung in eine Hexe, einen Schwarzmagier oder ähnliches. Was man im Spiegel sieht, gehört nicht in die reale Welt, die andere Seite, die andere dunkle Welt, die ja zu den dunklen Kräften oder den Tod angehört. Womöglich ist es deshalb in östlichen Ländern verboten, vor den Spiegel zu speisen. Du isst dir die Schönheit weg. Eine Spiegelung durch eine Öffnung, zu dessen der Spiegel ja zählt. Man glaube, dass der Spiegel einen auffrisst oder eher die Anziehung des Originals. Man sollte immer stimmig mit dem Spiegel leben, doch leider laden wir heutzutage zu viel Negatives rein, weil wir hauptsächlich damit beschäftigt sind, unsere Mängel vor dem Spiegel zu beseitigen. Falten im Gesicht, Figur passt nicht, können es nicht sofort ändern und wenden uns mit schlechter Energie zurücklassen vom Spiegel ab. Der Spiegel aber speichert alle Emotionen und gibt ihm nur einen Grund und er führt diese zu dir zurück. Im Spiegel sieht der Betrachter nicht nur sein Spiegelbild, sondern auch etwas, was auf die Laune und das Schicksal Einfluss nimmt. Deshalb sollte man ein paar Regeln beachten. Man sollte nachts oder bei Gewitter nicht in den Spiegel schauen, weil Mythen besagen, dass zu dieser Zeit sich die andere Welt öffnet, wo dunkle Mächte herrschen und wohin eine tote Seele wandern kann. Spiegel sind in der Lage, längst verstorbene Menschen, die sich angeschaut haben, jahrelang zu speichern, ihre Umrisse samt Seele. Man sollte auch nie in einen Spiegel, wenn es dunkel oder Nacht ist, schauen, vor allem bei grellem Licht, da in diesen vom Verstand bringende Umrisse enthalten sind und die Energie des Blickes eines Menschen, der in den Spiegel schaut, könnte böse Geister mit Kraft anlocken, was ihnen dazu verhelfen kann, in die reale Welt zu gelangen. Weitere Legenden besagen, man darf nicht nach Mitternacht in den Spiegel schauen. Unsere Vorfahren glaubten, dass hinter dem Spiegel die Umrisse des Teufels schlummern und außerdem es von Mitternacht bis 3 Uhr eine Zeit gibt, die sich Teufelsstunde nennt. Somit kann man den Teufel im Spiegel erblicken zu dieser Zeit. Auch ist es nicht ratsam, bei Kerzenlicht in den Spiegel zu schauen. Es zieht Leid und Krankheiten an. Auch kann das Kartenlesen vor dem Spiegel zum Unglück führen, weil sie meistens nachts oder in einer dunklen Umgebung stattfinden. Es wird empfohlen, immer nur neue Spiegel in ein Haus mitzubringen, ohne im Spiegel enthaltene Schicksale oder Unglücke. Man sollte den Spiegel mit Wasser und Salz waschen und niemals gegenüber der Eingangstür oder vor dem Bett aufhängen. Das war der erste Teil über Spiegel, wo es um die schlichten und alten Mythen des Spiegels geht.
So. Wie gesagt, findet ihr in der Playlist. Warte mal. Wenn ihr hier... Ne, wir müssen hier zurück. Pause. Bei uns im Kanal. Wir haben das hier extra so aufgesplittet für euch. Hier oben sind die Tartaria Specials, also die längeren Videos. Dann habt ihr hier die Kurzfilmchen. Da findet ihr alle Filme. Die haben wir so kategoriert, die so maximal 15 Minuten gehen. Die Specials sind immer eigentlich in der Regel länger. Livestream hier unten. Alles, was wir so wie heute ist aufgenommen. Das kann man sich dann auch mal anschauen. Und hier ganz kurze, kleine, ja, so, was ich mal so mit TikTok und so weiter parallel mal noch gemacht habe. Das könnt ihr hier sozusagen sehen. In der Kanalinfo, wie gesagt, hier sind die Links. Telegram, Facebook und so weiter. Odyssee haben wir, wie gesagt, einen Sicherungskanal. Und dort sind die Videos auch nochmal hinterlegt. Ja. Ich hoffe, das hat euch jetzt gefallen. Wie gesagt, ich sehe gerade, wir haben eine Verzögerung. Macht aber nichts. Ein paar Sekunden. Gut, dann würde ich sagen, machen wir so langsam Schluss für heute. War wieder nichts mit Fernseh gucken und so weiter. Schön, dass ihr hier wart. Wir sehen uns dann bis zum nächsten Mal. Ja, habt eine ruhige Nacht und einen angenehmen Start in den Tag. Und wir werden uns wiedersehen.